Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive explainer. So let's start with a really fascinating, honestly kind of baffling paradox. Did you know that despite all of our massive, incredible modern medical advancements, human life expectancy in a lot of developed nations has actually plateaued? And in some places it's even slightly dipped? Now, how is that possible? Well, it essentially comes down to a massive mismatch. Our modern, sit-at-a-desk, ultra-processed, high-stress lifestyle is fundamentally mismatched with our evolutionary biology. Our bodies just aren't built for the way we live today. But here is the good news. Today, we are fundamentally redefining health. We're going to explore exactly how to cultivate lasting, sustainable habits for true, deep-rooted longevity. Look, I know it is so incredibly easy in our fast-paced, constantly connected world to put our own well-being on the absolute back burner. We all do it. But prioritizing ourselves has literally never been more crucial. And this isn't just about tagging a few extra years onto the end of your life. It's about making sure those years are deeply fulfilling, vibrant, and active. We're going to break down the heavy science of self-care today, and we're going to turn all those abstract floating concepts into concrete daily actions that you can start right now. All right, let's dive into this. Here is a quick look at our agenda for today's explainer. First, the holistic wellness paradigm. Second, the foundation, which is physical health. Third, mind, emotions, and spirit. Fourth, the science of recovery. Fifth, nutrition for cellular longevity. And finally, number 6, building sustainable daily habits.
Starting with Section 1, the holistic wellness paradigm. We're going well beyond the mere absence of disease here.
Now, when we talk about the dimensions of our health, and by that I mean the physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual aspects, we have to realize that these are absolutely not isolated silos. You can't just put them in separate boxes. There is a profound, continuous ripple effect at play in our bodies. Let's think about a super relatable example. Think about a time recently when you got a truly terrible night of sleep, just tossing and turning all night. The next day, you probably weren't just physically tired, right? Your patience with your kids or your partner or your colleagues probably completely vanished. You might have snapped at someone over something tiny. What does that tell us? It means your physical deficit directly ruined your emotional regulation, and in turn, it negatively impacted your social relationships. It's a domino effect. Conversely, when you take steps to improve your mental wellness, like bringing down your baseline stress, your physical body quite literally responds. Your digestion improves, your tension headaches disappear. You cannot treat one single piece of the human puzzle without impacting the entire system. It's all connected. To put it plainly, let's establish our working definition for today. Holistic wellness is true health that extends far beyond the mere absence of disease. Historically, if we look back, humanity has had a very, very restrictive view of what health actually means. Basically, the old school thought was, if you weren't actively sick or dying in a hospital bed, congratulations, you were considered healthy. But let's be real, that is simply surviving. That's the bare minimum. The World Health Organization actually defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. This modern, multidimensional approach asks us to look at harmonious balance across our whole life. It is entirely about cultivating daily vitality so we are genuinely thriving, waking up with energy rather than just painfully getting by day after day. Moving on to Section 2, the foundation. This is physical health, the absolute base of our wellness pyramid.
Okay, so when you establish strong physical pillars, I want to be really clear about something. You aren't just building vanity muscles to look good in a swimsuit. And you aren't just building cardio endurance to run a 5K. You are creating deep, systemic, biological resilience. In fact, modern science now reveals something that is just absolutely mind-blowing. Our muscles actually act as an endocrine organ. Let that sink in for a second. When you exercise, your contracting muscles actively manufacture and release specific proteins called myokines directly into your bloodstream. And here's where it gets incredibly cool. These myokines travel all the way up to your brain and literally act as natural antidepressants. They physically alter your brain chemistry for the better. This completely proves just how deeply biologically interconnected our physical and mental states truly are. Building this physical resilience is essentially forging the armor that allows you to stand strong against chronic stress, the natural aging process, and everyday environmental challenges.
So let's look at the foundational parameters we need to hit. The baseline is about 30 minutes of moderate activity 5 days a week, making sure you combine both cardio and strength training. We also need to focus on whole food, plant-forward diets. Think the Mediterranean or DASH diets. And of course, keeping up with regular preventative care checkups. But honestly, I want to heavily emphasize sleep right here. You absolutely need 7 to 9 hours of it. We often think of sleep as just hitting the off switch, a passive state where nothing happens. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Sleep is an incredibly active process.
When you finally enter deep sleep, a hidden mechanism in your brain called the glymphatic system fires up. This is fascinating. Your actual brain cells slightly shrink in size. Why? To allow cerebral spinal fluid to rush in and literally wash away toxic, damaged proteins that have built up all day long while you were thinking and working. Imagine a street sweeper coming through your brain every single night. If you cut your sleep short to 5 or 6 hours, that cellular trash literally stays inside your head, accelerating aging and cognitive decline. So get that sleep.
That brings us perfectly to Section 3, Mind, Emotions, and Spirit. This is where we talk about building psychological resilience.
Because of that ripple effect we just explored, proper physical rest directly and powerfully enables better mental acuity. Take a second to really think about your daily routine. We live in a hustle culture that absolutely champions multitasking, right? Answering emails while eating lunch, while listening to a meeting. But let's be completely honest with ourselves. Trying to operate your life with 40 browser tabs open in your brain is completely exhausting. Neurologically speaking, constant context switching, bouncing from task to task, depletes your brain's daily glucose reserves incredibly fast. Your brain burns through its fuel, which is highly anxiety-inducing for your nervous system. On the flip side, we have mindful presence. This means simply being fully 100% engaged in one current task. That preserves your brain energy. Just the single, deliberate behavioral shift of doing one thing at a time fundamentally reduces anxiety, drastically sharpens your focus, and honestly, it brings the joy back to those everyday mundane moments.
And the hard neurochemistry backing this up is just fascinating. We're talking measurable physical changes. Just 10 to 15 minutes of daily meditation significantly reduces cortisol. Now, cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone. In short bursts, it's great, but when it's constantly elevated, it essentially wreaks havoc on your immune system and ages your heart. Bringing that down is crucial. Furthermore, engaging in lifelong learning, and by this I mean picking up a new language, doing difficult puzzles, or learning to play an instrument, builds what scientists call cognitive reserve. Now, I want you to think of cognitive reserve as a massive biological savings account for your brain. By giving your brain's white matter a literal, challenging workout, you are building extra redundant neural pathways. It's like building backup roads in a city. You can draw upon these backup pathways later in life to significantly delay age-related mental decline. You are literally future-proofing your mind.
But it doesn't stop inside our own heads. Beyond our internal minds, we have to look at social and spiritual vitality. Have you ever heard of the Blue Zones research? It's this incredible study of the absolute longest-lived populations on Earth, places where people routinely live to be over 100. This research proves definitively that things like meaningful connections and community engagement aren't just nice-to-haves. They are vital, biological longevity markers. Take the people of Okinawa, Japan, for example. They practice this profound concept called ikigai, which translates to a deep, driving sense of purpose, or simply a reason for waking up in the morning. They pair this with moais, which are lifelong, deeply tight-knit social support groups formed all the way back in childhood. Having this, aligning their daily actions with their beliefs, and having an unbreakable social safety net, it doesn't just make them smile. It quite literally, biologically lowers their resting blood pressure, reduces their stress hormones, and keeps them vibrantly thriving well over a century.
Let's pivot now to Section 4, the science of recovery. We really need to reframe this as an active process. We absolutely have to move past this old, culturally ingrained myth of just doing nothing on the couch to recover. Real, effective recovery is a highly active, incredibly strategic protocol. It usually starts with active recovery, things like going for a light walk or doing gentle yoga between your intense days. And yes, it includes strategic, total rest days for actual cellular repair. But I really want to unpack step 3 here, temperature therapy. Because guys, this isn't just some trendy wellness fad you see online. When you expose your body to extreme cold, like an ice bath or a cold shower, you activate something called brown fat, and you force your body to release a massive, immediate surge of norepinephrine. This powerful neurochemical rapidly lowers systemic inflammation throughout your entire body. On the flip side, exposing yourself to intense heat, like sitting in a traditional sauna, triggers the release of something called heat shock proteins. You can think of these as elite, microscopic repairmen that patrol your body, looking for and fixing damaged cellular structures. When you pair this hot and cold therapy with restorative practices like deep breath work, you are actively keeping your cells biologically young.
Moving right along to Section 5, Nutrition for Cellular Longevity. This is all about how we fuel the system. There is an emerging, incredibly powerful scientific field right now called nutrigenomics, and what it tells us is totally paradigm shifting. It tells us that food is not just calories. It's not just energy or fuel in a tank. Food is information. It is literally lines of code that tell your underlying genetic software exactly how to behave. The specific molecules you eat communicate directly with your DNA. They act as biological switches. So every single time you eat a meal, you're signaling your genes to do one of two things. You're either turning on inflammatory pathways that accelerate the aging process, or you're turning off those destructive pathways to promote repair and help your body thrive. It honestly puts enormous, exciting, and immediate power right at the end of your fork.
Now, one of the absolutely most fascinating mechanisms for this cellular repair is triggered through intermittent fasting. You might have heard of the 16-8 schedule. A lot of people use it. It's simply an 8-hour window where you eat your meals, followed by a 16-hour fasting window where you consume 0 calories. But the magic is what happens during those 16 hours. When you fast, usually right around that 14 to 16-hour mark, you trigger a profound biological state called autophagy. I want you to think of autophagy like a cellular Roomba, or a highly efficient biological recycling plant. When there's no new food coming in, your cells get a little hungry, and instead of shutting down, they actively go to work. They seek out damaged, misfolded proteins and general cellular junk, and they break them down to recycle them for energy. This cellular cleanup process is quite literally slowing down the aging of your body from the inside out. And by the way, this is exactly why late-night, midnight snacking is so incredibly detrimental to your longevity. It completely shuts down the Roomba.
Okay, so what about during the 8-hour eating window? The goal here needs to be a strict anti-inflammatory focus. Chronic, low-grade inflammation is the root, underlying driver of almost all modern chronic diseases. So we want to fuel up on big, bright, colorful vegetables, fresh berries, fatty fish that are super rich in omega-3s, and lots of nuts and seeds. But I really want to highlight why specific culinary herbs like turmeric work so well. Turmeric contains an active compound called curcumin. Curcumin is so incredibly powerful, it practically acts as a targeted molecular switch, shutting down systemic inflammation at the source. But here's the crazy biological trick you need to know. Curcumin is actually very poorly absorbed by your gut on its own. You have to consume it alongside black pepper. The piperine in black pepper actively boosts the absorption of curcumin by an astonishing 2,000%. It's all about making these smart, targeted dietary combinations supported by high-quality supplements like vitamin D and magnesium to give your body exactly what it needs.
And I cannot stress this enough. A strict, non-negotiable metric to keep this entire system running is drinking 2 to 3 liters of pure water every single day. Proper hydration isn't just about quenching a dry throat. Consider this. Your brain is predominantly made of water. A mere 2% drop in your baseline hydration levels, which you might barely even feel, can lead to a highly noticeable, scientifically measurable drop in your cognitive function, your memory, and your focus. Furthermore, going back to what we just talked about, as your biological recycling plant goes to work during autophagy, it absolutely needs a constant, heavy flow of water to effectively flush all those broken down cellular toxins completely out of your system. You have to literally wash the trash away.
Finally, we reach Section 6, Building Sustainable Daily Habits, because we have to make all of this actually last.
We have gone through all this incredible, cutting-edge science. But if we're being honest, having vague desires like, oh, I'm going to work out every single day at 5 a.m. is exactly why most New Year's resolutions completely crash and burn by January 4th. We desperately need the SMART Goals framework. This stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So instead of saying a vague phrase like, I'll be more active, you make a contract with yourself. You say, I will walk for 20 minutes right after lunch 3 days a week. The psychology behind this shift is vital for success. Your brain requires specific, time-bound metrics so it knows exactly, without a doubt, when a task is actually completed. That precise moment of completion triggers a small but powerful hit of dopamine in your brain. That dopamine is the neurochemical reward that literally cements the behavior into a permanent habit.
Behavioral science tells us a very harsh truth that we all need to accept. Willpower runs out. It is a finite resource. Systems, however, do not run out. You simply cannot rely on intense, fiery motivation because motivation fades when you're tired. You need to start with micro-habits. A truly fantastic strategy here is called habit stacking. This means taking a tiny, incredibly easy new habit and attaching it directly to an already fully established one. For example, committing to doing just 1 single minute of deep, stress-reducing breathwork while you stand there waiting for your morning coffee to brew. It is so small and so easy, it's virtually impossible to fail. Next, you have to design your environment to work for you. Put that massive water bottle directly on your desk, right in your line of sight, so making the good choice becomes entirely frictionless. Implement regular monthly reviews to see what's working, and just let your well-designed systems do all the heavy lifting. If you take away anything today, the core message of this explainer is that balancing these interconnected building blocks creates an absolute fortress of holistic wellness. When you deliberately intertwine the daily, cellular Roomba cleanup of autophagy, the rich, protective biological savings account of your cognitive reserve, and the absolutely frictionless, automated microhabits we just discussed, they all lock together seamlessly. This profound biological harmony doesn't just add numerical, chronological years to your total lifespan. It fundamentally and radically adds vibrant, high-quality, disease-free life to the years you have.
And listen, if you are sitting there right now feeling like maybe you've waited way too long to start or the damage is done, the science offers an incredibly beautiful note of hope. It is absolutely never too late. It is a proven biological fact that the human brain retains its neuroplasticity, which is its incredible ability to physically rewire itself, heal, and form brand new habits well into our 70s and 80s. Your muscular adaptiveness functions very similarly. Even if you are starting these holistic practices much later in life, the data shows it still brings highly significant, measurable, life-altering benefits.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this one provocative thought. Looking back at all the systems, the science, and the habits we've covered today, which single practice, just one tiny, frictionless microhabit, will you actually implement this week? Seriously, I challenge you right now, grab a pen or open the notes app on your phone and write it down. Just pick one. Do not try to change everything about your life tomorrow morning. That's a recipe for burnout. Pick one single thing, build a smart system around it, and let that be the incredibly powerful beginning of your holistic transformation. Thanks so much for joining us on this journey today on The Explainer. See you next time.